evening, Goffstown, and welcome to the July 27, 2026 regular meeting of the Goffstown Select Board. And if you will, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Looking for a motion for acceptance and corrections of the minutes of July 13th, 2026, public and non-public minutes.
Make a motion to accept the 7/13/2026 public and non-public minutes with corrections if need be.
Second.
Oh, either way.
Okay, motion by Mark, second by Allison. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I think there's one announcement tonight. And it's a note from retired Parks and Recreation Director David French, received via email June 28, 2026. Dear Chairman Craig, I'm sending this correspondence to you and the rest of the Select Board to express my appreciation to Director Rick Wilhelmi and his staff for another successful Goffstown Gala. Hard to imagine that this event just completed its 47th year. We had a tremendous turnout of 185 registrants on a bright, sunny day. It is one of the oldest continuous road races held in the state. We could not continue this community event without the continued support of the Select Board and the Parks and Recreation Commission, Goffstown Police Department, CERT volunteers, and our sponsors. To have this event named after me is humbling and indeed a cherished honor that I share with my family who have been with me on this journey. I would respectfully request that this correspondence be shared with Director Wilhelmi and the Parks and Recreation Commission and read to the Select Board and submitted into the public record at your next public meeting. Thank you again for your support, and we are on our way to number 48 next June and shooting for 50 in a couple of years. Regards, David French. Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Anyone here for public comment? Okay, seeing and hearing no one, I will close public comment. And next item on the agenda is Liam Piercy. Come on up, have a seat. And just for the record, just state your name and your address. Okay? All right. Thanks.
Name, Liam Piercy. Address, 77 Terrell Hill Road, Goffstown, New Hampshire.
Good. Welcome to the Select Board. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Richard, give that to Derek.
Actually, can you pass
Yeah,
it to Selectman
Mark will
LeMay?
have one.
Oh, thanks.
I'll put this one in
Yeah.
the record.
Thank you.
Oops. Sign this one.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman and members of the Select Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Liam Piercy. I am a scout working towards my Eagle rank with Troop 99B Goffstown. Tonight, I'm here to ask for your support and specifically a building permit for my Eagle Scout service project. My project is to design, build, and install an informational kiosk on the Goffstown Rail Trail. It will be located near Goffstown Village, somewhere in the first 50 feet of the start of that trail. The kiosk will give trail users information about that trail itself, so people who start their walk or ride in the village will have access to the same information currently only posted near the Parks and Recreation Department and further down the trail. So there is no information about the trail or anything that the Parks and Rec Department would want people to know until they get in front of the Parks and Rec's building. Right now, the closest kiosk to the village is maintained by the Parks and Rec's Department, which means visitors who begin their trip in the village do not see any trail information until much later, or not at all. This new kiosk will serve as both an informational resource and a visible landmark using and a visible landmark marking the trail entrance in the village. It will help the town share updates, maps, and safety information with residents and visitors alike. The structure will be built using standard construction materials, pressure-treated 4x4 posts and framing, T111 siding, and a cedar shake roof. It will also include plexiglass glazed display panels for posting information. It will include a small shelf and a locking door to protect posted materials from the weather. I have been working with the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail Committee to identify the exact site and to make sure this project supports their goals as well as the trails. I plan to begin work around July 25th, so that's when I started my project and planning it, with a target completion date of September 30th, 2026. That is not set in stone. That is just the area that I would plan to have the project in the ground and completed. I do intend to hold a separate build day and a separate installation day to make logistics easier and safer for everyone involved. That will most realistically plan out to be more than one build day and one installation day. I'm hoping to keep the installation day set to a minimum. If possible, I will block off a certain part of the rail trail so there's no damage to other users. If I am unable to get it blocked off, I will just include some safety cones and non-permanent signs and warnings that yes, there will be construction in this area. Because this project involves power tools, it will be supervised entirely by registered adult leaders and me in accordance with BSA's age guidelines for tool usage, which is no one under 18 can use power tools. I will also take extra precautions when transporting and setting the kiosk in place, given its size and weight. So far, my plan is to transport it in different pieces and in a trailer, and then we will combine the legs and the main frame together for the build day and put it in. And so, to finalize, I'm respectfully requesting the Select Board's approval and a building permit to install this kiosk on town-associated trail property. I'm happy to provide the board with my full written project proposal, which is what you have in front of you now, including the materials list, cost estimate, and safety plan, and to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much for your time and consideration tonight.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
Do you have a design by any chance, or a picture of what it's going to look like?
I do have a design. I can also send it in an email later. If you want to see it now, I can pull it up.
That'd be great if we could just see what it looks like.
While you're doing that, is it just like the one that's at Parks and Rec?
Yes.
I haven't seen the other one on your design, but I've seen that one.
Yes, it is. It is by. It's the exact same design as the one by Parks and Recs. Should.
Who controls the locked area for putting up signage?
Putting up signage, I believe, would be managed by the Parks and Recs department and the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail, as they do stuff with. They do stuff in accordance with the Parks and Rec department for stuff like that. Like I've gone to a couple of their meetings and they've talked about things with the trail, such as signage that has been vandalized that they've helped fixed up, stuff like that. I do not seem to have the plans on me for some reason, but I can send it in an email later. But for reference, it is the same design as the other ones in front of the Parks and Recs department.
So it'll look like that?
Yes.
Yeah, I got some. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it in person.
So same size, everything, dimensions?
Yes.
And so you'll have the same lettering on it, all that sort of jazz?
Yes.
And you've talked to the people on the rail trail, and they're okay with the location and everything?
Yes.
Okay. And I was looking at your presentation, and it said, Mr. Charles Bavard agrees to accept responsibility for the kiosk upon its completion. What does that mean, I guess? How is he going to be responsible? Is he going to, if vandals knock it over, is he going to have it fixed, or is he just going to change the notices on it, or have you talked about that?
Yes. So when I am done with my project, I step away completely. I can do other like volunteer work to help touch it up and stuff, but I have to completely step away from any and all authority over that. So basically, what he's doing is taking ownership of that recreational area, which is just the kiosk. So he's there to make sure if it is vandalized that we'll repaint over it, changing the maps and information and stuff like that.
Okay.
Derek, do we have confirmation that the location is actually town property, or?
Yeah, that's town property through them. We'll work with Liam just to make sure we do have the survey of that area and coordinate with Parks and Recs.
And so what we're looking for here is just to get permission so that way you can establish a building permit, because we're not necessarily like...
So typically, this is not something that we would do a building permit for, but we would ask you to get permission for him to move forward with the project and construct the project on town-owned property.
Okay, so it's not really a building permit per se, it's more permission to...
Permission, yeah.
Permission.
Yeah, and we could write up a letter from the board, or on behalf of the board.
I just have one question I hesitate to bring up, but does it require insurance?
Most likely, the value of it, if something were to happen, is below our insurance deductible. I mean, it
No, I mean if somebody gets hurt or something like that.
Who's responsible
constructing
for
it.
it?
We can talk to them about BSA. All the Boy Scouts are insured by BSA America,
Yeah.
Scouting America, so we can work with them to get an insurance certificate on hand for the days that they're going to be out there.
Okay, I don't want that to stop the project, but I think we
Yeah.
should check that. Okay. Anybody else?
I'll make a motion to approve the project proposal for the Goffstown Rail Trail Kiosk.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Richard, second by Allison. Any further questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Good luck,
Good luck, we'll be watching you.
Thank you again for your time.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
September 30th, all right?
That's the plan.
All right. We'd love to see when it's done.
Okay, next up, Public Works Director.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe that a couple meetings ago, there was some discussion of the Main Street, Elm, High Street intersections and maybe what options going forward are available to the town to improve both traffic movement and safety at those intersections. So I know Derek had provided a few of the previous traffic studies done through the last 25 years or so, starting with DOT, maybe even before that, looking at a couple of different signalized options. The Goffstown Planning Board, the EDC, and the Village Planning Committees had done their kind of takes on maybe what the village ambiance should be, and some of that included some traffic schemes or discussions of. Biggest item in the past that has been looked at with these is the 2014 CMAQ, the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality grant project that the town embarked on for just two intersections, both there at at Main, Elm, and High Street, as well as the Pleasant Street, South Mass Main intersection. As you may or may not know, we took that CMAQ grant through full design, but then when it came time for construction, the construction estimates for a fully built grant project, which has to be bid and meet all federal requirements for Davis-Bacon wages and all that kind of thing. The way the project was trending, it was going to be a significant undertaking for a 45-55 grant split. So at the time, the select board opted to submit final reimbursement for the design plans with DOT, close the project, and then allow DPW as part of our road plan in subsequent years to complete both intersections as well as a full reconstruction of Main Street, North Mast, with streetscapes and sidewalk rebuilds and that kind of thing. So in the end, we incorporated the study changes, which as a result of the project was the traffic calming alternative, which didn't really change a whole heck of a lot about the actual traffic movement, just some of the safety concerns that were addressed. But at the time, the discussion was always, okay, in the future, there's going to have to be some more work on this area, in particular that intersection here at Elm and High Street, because it is functioning right now at a level of service F, which is pretty far down the scale of functionality. And that's measured based upon traffic queuing, both on Main Street itself in both directions, as well as High Street and Elm Street for all the traffic turning movements. So happy to kind of talk about what options may look or be worth looking at more in the future. I know just kind of as a broad brush, the main things that have been looked at here for traffic signals include 3 different versions. One version which plunks traffic signals at the existing intersection on both ends, treats both Elm and High as one intersection, even though it's really 2. It's sort of separated by the library corner. But there was some analysis of what treating that as one big intersection and not changing any of the lane quantities would do. There was a look, this is all by the DOT, a look at adding through lanes with dedicated right turn and left turn lanes onto Elm and onto High Street, what they call a 3-lane alternative. And then there was a 4-lane alternative which would add both straight through and turning lanes in both directions, as well as the exit and entrance of Elm and High. As you may imagine, as you increase the number of lanes, the use of the right-of-way that we currently have would increase, which pinches a little bit what we'd be able to do with pedestrians. Right now we have sidewalk and parking in some of the areas that would be turned into turning lanes. When you start talking about intersections and signalized intersections, the queue length of those lanes on each approach of an intersection have to be long enough to work. So if you have a leg that only can hold 2 cars, it doesn't really function as a normal 4-lane intersection might. So there's some right-of-way use the farther away from those intersection points that you would need to either reduce sidewalk usage or acquire some right-of-way through either eminent domain or purchases of some of the abutters. As you might imagine, based on the intersection, the biggest landowners involved are the library itself and the town on the common side, as well as the Sully's supermarket. So the DOT looked at some intersection options. All of them, unfortunately, while they make entrance and exit from High and Elm easier, they negatively, at least through modeling, impact Main Street and North Mass traffic. So they add queuing because now you're building in a regular opportunity for traffic from those side streets to enter onto the main drag. And because you're putting in a signalized intersection, you have to put in pedestrian phasing as well. Right now, there are crosswalk at stop controls at both High Street and Elm Street, but with a traffic signal scheme, you have to build in a pedestrian push-button schema. So as you do that, now you're taking more and more of the emphasis away from the highest traffic through lanes of North Mass and Main, 114 proper, and placing more emphasis on those side streets. The other options that have been looked at with primarily the CMAQ grant project was different roundabout schemes, whether or not there be an opportunity to either have a single roundabout that's sort of oblong, peanut-shaped, I think is the term that was thrown around in 2013, 2014, to have one roundabout serve both intersections. That was found to not really work unless the library was completely moved away from the intersection, and obviously that's there's a lot to that decision. Then there was some look at a roundabout which leaves the existing Elm Street intersection largely alone, but creates a right turn out only, so you couldn't take a left turn out of Elm Street. But then there's a roundabout at the High Street intersection. This doesn't do a heck of a lot for queuing on Main Street, but it does help the queuing on Elm Street. Unfortunately, with that, the right-of-way concerns start to impact the popcorn stand area, the Sully's supermarket parking lot, so that becomes kind of a hot button issue too pretty quickly. Never mind that a roundabout in Goffstown is always a hot button issue. And then there was another scheme that looked at two separate roundabouts, one for each intersection. In this case, because they're so close together and due to those same right-of-way constraints, they would have to be mini roundabouts, which means similar to what we had to do to modify the Wallace Road roundabout, shrink the center island and create a traversable cobbled apron area which large trucks can now use.
Which has had a problem sometimes too over there.
Exactly. So, right now that's one of the smallest roundabouts in the state. If we had two mini roundabouts here, I think they would both be competitors for that smallest diameter roundabout because there's just not a whole lot of room there for that. Not to mention driver training and all that, how to navigate two roundabouts in close succession like that. There's not a lot of that experience in New Hampshire for sure. Those were looked at. As part of both the Village Planning Committee study and the CMAQ, there was some look at and some interest in a one-way loop alternative like you might see in Laconia or Dover as prime examples. Various versions of which may use existing street networks such as White Street or Kendall Hadley Way, Depot Street, another version which used part of Church Street, the pass-through here behind Town Hall, actually turning Town Hall parking lot into part of 114 eastbound, and then exiting at the Town Hall entrance. A couple different options there. Some which involved punching through the fire department property, which abuts the backside of where the barber shop is on North Mast, and utilizes the area along the drainage. It's not really a stream per DES, but the drainage area there on Church Street that goes underneath everything on Town Hall property. So there's some options to be looked at there. The one-way loop option is by far the best for traffic management purposes. At least for the 2034 design year, back when CMAQ was done, it looked at that intersection and that presented a level of service A, B, or in some PM peak hours, a level of service C. Versus Fs and Es for the other option. So it was a significant change in queuing length. As you might imagine, you're not restricting any entrances from some of those side streets. So if they find a gap in traffic coming out of Elm, they can take a right turn. Same thing with High Street, and just kind of have to go around the Mulberry Push to get back to where they start or head, eastbound. So the downside of a one-way loop alternative, of course, is some of the right-of-way concerns. If you don't want to look at existing street networks, the cost of construction goes up a little bit as you're kind of using that drainage area for the majority of a new street. Of course, there's some residential housing on White Street and Church Street that would be impacted. There'd be some discussions with the fire station about using Church Street or converting Church Street to a one-way for a short section. If you wanted to, kind of terminate here on Church Street. So there's definitely some, I think, discussion to be had there for some benefit. It's not a cheap endeavor to start looking at complex traffic calculations with signals. So I think, I know Derek had given you the CMAQ final report, 200 and something pages, and almost half of that is just traffic software output. So, doing counts for all the various turning movements and all that. So, it's, I think the town's portion of the CMAQ project was about $70,000, I think, and maybe even more. Granted, that was 2 intersections, and there's some other legwork that wouldn't have to be redone, but certainly tens of thousands of dollars to kind of have a more dedicated traffic study if the board wants to kind of pursue any other options in more detail. The only other thing I guess I put in a memo, but I'll throw out for the public is a few years ago, 2017, I think, the town purchased 1 North Mast, a small blue house that was directly across from the library, using the Select Board's Capital Reserve Fund for land acquisition. That building went up for sale, and now in hindsight, it's definitely a very good price. And for that intersection, it wasn't going to ever be that cheap again to acquire land right at a point of known failure. So the board hopped on that, purchased that building. It was rented out for a couple of years and then finally demolished a few years ago. So there's a little bit more real estate now at the corner than there had been in the past, knowing that there may be some value in asking an engineering firm to kind of rejigger some of the original schemes that required the library to be moved, for instance. Maybe there's a way to shoehorn some things in now that there wouldn't have been. The other thing I guess I would say with any of these alternatives, a one-way loop scenario provides the most usable remaining width of the right-of-way. So, as you can imagine, Main Street right now is just 2-way. It's pretty tight, but we were able to get in both parallel parking on both sides with 2 lanes of traffic and some pedestrian calming features. In a one-way scenario, you now have a little bit more free reign about what to do within that right-of-way because you're only looking to pass, one way of traffic. If you want more than 1 lane, there'll be some sections that'll be wider, but for the business end of it, if it's 1 way, you might be able to get some more either pedestrian infrastructure, wider sidewalks.
You could redesign the parking, maybe have people go in.
Potentially on what a lot of places do is an angled parking.
Angled parking then.
A little bit easier to navigate in and out.
Are you suggesting taking that 2 lanes, instead of keeping it 2 lanes going one direction, just take it to 1 lane? Is that what you mean?
If a one-way loop is looked at, that's one of those additional benefits that you can, every other solution still requires at least 1 lane in each direction. So our options are real limited unless we start taking away sidewalk or taking away parking.
Yeah.
That's the only one that's left that would actually free up some
It
additional
allows you to
things.
have space to kind of push people in different directions.
So there may be some give-take
You could
possibilities.
Continue with 2 lanes
You
through
could.
there, just both of them going the same direction, I mean.
That's definitely, one thing that could be looked at.
I just feel like it might be cheaper to continue with that than also start revamping the parking.
Just saying future-wise.
But, it's definitely possible, but.
That's the sort of thing that, if the board wants to go down that road with an engineer, they could look at a one-way loop alternative, 3 or 4 different terminuses and beginning and end points. How big is the loop? How small? But also, is the entire stretch two lanes in each direction? Some of that, adding a second lane helps both turning traffic into Elm, for example, not being stuck in 1 lane behind somebody that's just going through. But it can also complicate the people turning out of Elm like we currently have, where you're now trying to guess if the guy in front of the guy you see is the last car in queue, if they're going to turn. It can make for a blind movement. So, but that's the kind of thing they can model.
So how does the one-way loop fix the fact that we have multiple intersections coming in right now?
So what that normally would do is restrict turns. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that a one-way loop would start at Church Street and end at White Street on North Mast. So it would use Mast Road, Main Street, North Mast, White, and Church would kind of be a loop, just for the sake of discussion. Starting at Church Street, you would not be able to take a left turn out of Elm Street or High Street or, I believe, Summer Street.
So people have
By
to go
Sully's.
to the right and then come back up and around.
Exactly. So by limiting what can happen now, you're limiting stacking. You know, stacking on Summer Street's not a terrible situation now, but certainly on Elm and High, there's quite a queue of people waiting to turn both right and left. If you limit left turns, now you're not requiring, or you're not relying on the kindness of others at this intersection to let people go or wait for a break in traffic. Everyone's turning right, so it's a pretty smooth, you can do a slip lane almost into the existing traffic flow. And same thing at High Street. So it's one less turning movement for each of the two intersections, so it simplifies things. And anytime you can simplify the number of turning movements, you speed things up as far as throughput.
So that definitely keeps cars moving. It doesn't necessarily satisfy pedestrians getting smacked or anything like that.
That part is true. What it does for pedestrians by default is it makes their crossing a little simpler because now they're only looking for traffic coming from one direction. And you're not, at Elm Street in particular, you get those situations where somebody is stopped looking through a car to take a right turn and they aren't paying attention to a pedestrian getting ready to cross. You limit some of those issues, but you also can, back to that whole right-of-way use discussion, you might be able to increase either refuge islands in the middle. So if you do have a two-lane, one-way loop through town, you could have a pedestrian refuge island where they're only crossing one lane at a time, and there's a place to be. But also just that whole, I only really need to worry about traffic from one direction, really improves safety for the pedestrians.
So, I mean, today, like, there's nothing there, really, right? If we put in a light, though, like, people have to stop occasionally. Right now, people are stopping out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
And that could help, too. So why not any focus as a first step, just getting the lights in? Like, is it mainly the look and the feel of the lights? Is it...
There was a little bit of some of the aesthetic discussion. Certainly, the Village Planning Committee, I think, before the CMAQ study, was more concerned with the aesthetics of a signal. But CMAQ sort of brought up the DOT's own studies and then did their own for the roundabouts and showed that it's really the queuing issue on Main and North Mass. So adding signals significantly increases the backup on the main throughway.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, because people will be forced to stop.
Yep. And I don't travel all the way through. I do a little bit more now sometimes with the detour we've got set up, but I know on a regular day traffic's backing up to almost to the villa. And certainly with the detour, things are a little bit worse even at the intersection where everybody's.
Well, it's definitely worse because I got a phone call the other day saying it was way back.
Yeah.
You gotta remember Henry Bridge is out though too. It's just
that's why
the
they're
worst.
saying-
It's the worst it's ever gonna be, probably.
Right.
Well, let me ask you, and I'm not looking for hard numbers, but no matter what we do, we're probably gonna need a new traffic study or engineering study or something, even if we just put lights in, correct?
I think so, because the DOT information that was used for their study in 1998 was actually gathered in like 89, 90, I think.
And you said that was 70,000?
So the 2014 CMAQ project, the designer portion, the town portion of the CMAQ design.
They did a design.
Was
That
about
wasn't a traffic
70,000.
study.
The whole project included some traffic studies.
Traffic study was probably a portion of it.
Right. It was two intersections. It was, federal grant funded, so there were a lot of back and forth with DOT to satisfy some of the grant requirements. But it was a $169,000 project.
With design.
We only paid a portion of that, but yeah, design, I think, between design and, you're going to want things like public, feedback sessions, that sort of thing. So between study and design options generation, I think it was like 60-something thousand of that 160 was just those, items. So, but I think the data for the signals was so old that if you're going to rule in or rule out, you definitely would want to look at both all the current turning movements, as well as I don't even know what widths the DOT had used at the time to even start talking about adding lanes on, there's only so much real estate left.
Is it a fair statement to say that anything that we do of like either loop or lights or anything is going to be millions of dollars? Again, I'm not holding you to...
Probably at this point. So 2014 CMAQ had a couple, rough estimates for costs. Let's see, where did I stick that? But yeah, you're talking high six figures at a minimum for
the double rotary, it was getting
for anything.
But I don't think the other ones were millions of dollars. When I read through the study, it did not say that.
Yeah, you're 10 years on now, so I think it was, they were talking 600,000, I think at the time for
the double rotary.
For a single intersection, a single signalized intersection. But you start adding lanes and acquiring right-of-way and that kind of thing, obviously it ratchets up pretty quickly.
I'm assuming this would have to go before the voters if we put a plan together or something?
No, I think the biggest thing would be the appropriation, but you're going to want to get public input, and you may also want to involve the planning board, as this would impact the village.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts?
How much do we think the traffic study itself would be? Because typically a civil engineer coming out and doing that's not like tens and thousands of dollars. It's typically 10 grand or less.
So that would be for like a single, like a one-off traffic study for like a new pad development or something, or even a small subdivision. For something like this, where you've got, multiple intersections with multiple options that we'd be asking for, it probably would be tens of thousands.
Can we get a quote?
Certainly could. We've got, for 27 budgeting purposes, I'm kind of presuming that's kind of what we're thinking here. We have our on-call engineering firms, but it might make sense to approach McFarland Johnson, who was the firm that completed the CMAQ study in 2014. They've got base information, obviously the historical knowledge of it all. So we can certainly solicit if you want to get some budgetary numbers. They may, even though we have on-calls, they might provide the best pricing just because they have all that.
They already have the data.
Exactly. In a lot of cases. So it'd be updating counts and stuff, but at least, CAD files have already been started and that sort of thing.
I don't remember, did that study have the lights scenario?
It largely relied upon DOT's earlier work, which DOT just kind of said, hey, here, we can plunk in a bunch of lanes, and if you look real closely at the drawings, it's like, oh, well, that's where the common is right now, or that's where, where Main Street is, or sidewalk or parking.
I guess I'm asking, does it have the options we're looking at now? I don't remember.
It does. The CMAQ has sort of they've got a nice chart, Appendix A or B, I think, with sort of the breakdown of some of the pros and cons of each. But again, it's based on pretty old data for the traffic signal options. The newer stuff, the roundabouts and the...
So mainly you have to update the traffic study, make sure that it makes sense, and then they could say if any one of the traffic stops would actually even make sense or not. The rotary piece doesn't make any sense because we're going to have to take land away from other places for acquisition, so I think we should just rule that one out. And I think we should basically look at the lights and the ability to reroute the traffic.
Loop, yeah.
I like the rerouting the traffic.
The other piece that I think it would be wise to include would be right-of-way use. So if they're looking at a 3-lane or a 4-lane signal version, what that actually means. So how far away from the doorstep of the businesses or from Sully's parking lot are these lanes actually? Is there even sidewalk space left after some of the...
I don't even know if we want to go down that route, honestly. I think you want to kind of keep it and have lights and figure out what you can do with what you have, or reroute the traffic.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be happy to see 3 lanes of traffic coming through downtown. Talk about erasing the small-town charm.
That's true.
It'll look like you're going down a highway or 102 in Londonderry.
You could certainly, we could ask them just for an update of, turning movement counts and overall counts with a as-is, single-lane approach on the 3 legs and existing turning movements on Elm Street, and just see what the queuing looks like. They can plug all that information into their software, and certainly, if you're trying to rule in or rule out completely, if it just says, hey, you're going to double the queue length on Mass Road, I think that's probably a non-starter. But if they can get you that information without a full-blown, at least you can kind of cross that one off the list.
Do you think that those two, sorry.
No, go ahead, no, go
Do you
ahead.
think that those two are the most appropriate to go after, Adam?
Personally, I would highly say, having lived in communities with the one-way loop, I would support that option because it does work, it moves traffic, it frees up right-of-way space, cuts down on some of these T-bone accidents that you can have, and it moves cars. Politically, that for at least a few of those affected properties, obviously that's the least desirable solution, but you're weighing both the Goffstown impacts as well as the commuter. We have a lot of through commuters too, so there's only so many levers you can pull.
I guess what I'm hearing is we'd like to see some facts and figures on lights in the loop, right?
Yeah, Allison, do you have?
Yeah, I was just thinking, when are we talking about doing this? Are we talking about doing even the study in like 27, or are we talking about doing it now?
I think if we get the quote and,
Well, let's see
Yeah,
how
so-
much it's gonna cost.
Well, my bigger point was that I'm not sure we should be doing that while the bridge is still out. Because
100%.
it needs to be once traffic is back to a normal, we know that bridge is not gonna be out forever, that's not the.
But we can
plan.
start getting the quotes
Yeah,
and stuff.
100%,
So
100%.
I make a motion to have the Director of Public Works, have him go get a quote on the update on the traffic study, specifically with the focus on updating the lights and which ones are capable of using the pre-existing infrastructure that we have, or a single one-way solution.
A second.
Good motion by Josh, second by Allison. Any more comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it.
Okay. I will reach out to McFarland Johnson first. They may, if they're in purchasing policy-wise, and where we wouldn't have to go out to bid. Otherwise, I'll come back to you folks. If they are above that, we'd have to look at on-call versus McFarland or whatever.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Al.
And I think you might want me here for the next one as well.
Curbside recycling.
So this was tabled at your June 8th meeting, and
Tab 5A, 5B.
Do we have to untable it?
I don't know that your rules of procedure get that specific.
Want me to just
Jump in.
have at it? Okay. So as you may recall, the Cobble Creek Condo Association, which is off of Locust Hill Road, right next to the Elm Street intersection, had requested to, as provided in the town solid waste ordinance, to have the town start collecting recycling, single-stream recycling through the complex. They've got 30 units, and each would require a recycling container. So some of the questions that Derek had from the board had posed to the town attorney, I think were presented to you with their kind of response. Some of the legal questions involved. So I think at this point, if the board is ready to, we want to give the Cobble Creek folks an answer. It had been tabled before, so we didn't start the clock on any kind of appeals or whatever. Big thing, of course, is the consideration of one condo association versus others. We do have some areas in town where we collect recyclables and some associations where we do not. Some have requested we collect at the curb where their association meets the main public way. The cost of the barrels is definitely a concern. They're about $70 each right now. For something an order this large, we would need to trigger their minimum order of 100. So we go through quite a few barrels a year just through they're almost 30 years old in some cases. So we do a lot of replacements and repairs anyway, but certainly if we're going to get 30, that's a pretty big chunk of what we have ordered for the year, so we probably want to place another order.
But for clarity, Adam, we're not collecting one for one in any of the condominiums today.
1 for 1, meaning,
For each residential unit, we're not collecting any sort of, anything like that. We're also not going door to door and collecting any
oh,
of
like a
those.
fee?
No, how many recycling containers per unit?
So, right now, we do have a few condo associations where each dwelling unit has a recycling barrel. So a couple of big ones are Morgan Estates off of Danis Park Road and sorry, I'm spacing out on it. In Pinardville,
My understanding was that it wasn't a one for one. I thought it was a small group in a collection in one spot.
Some of them bring barrels to a centralized location. That's what you mean, 1 for 1? Yes,
Yeah.
okay. So some do have a designated, like, kind of barrel areas. Some, I believe, are, Morgan Estates, for example, is relatively scattered, just next to each individual unit. There may be a couple little turnouts there where they've got 4 or 5 units, kind of collectively put them out. But it is, Cobble Creek is fairly simple compared to a couple of the other developments. So there's, not as many little switch outs and turnout areas and stuff that some of the others have. I had taken a swing through. I didn't see anything from the geometry of the roadway or the quality of the roadway that would be a barring issue. A couple of branches from 1 or 2 trees that would need to be trimmed to get the larger trucks through, but no real barriers there. Currently, we don't charge for barrels, so that was one question. With an order that large, would we be looking to initiate a new fee townwide for barrel, either for new barrel purchases by new developments or for repairs? Might make sense anyway, regardless of what happens with this discussion. But those are the kind of the big ticket bullet points for this one. There is the solid waste ordinance provides for the select board to yay or nay for collection. If we choose to collect, we just require a waiver of liability from the association that says, hey, if you can't maintain your road network in a suitable, fashion, we can stop collection at any time. So.
This is what we were kind of thinking would open up a can of worms, though.
Yeah.
Right, and that every condo association now will want to do the same thing, correct?
Yeah, if we set a precedent.
Right.
And I don't think that we should be setting a precedent, and I also don't think we should be establishing new fees. I think that that our current collection was set forth by basically saying that we're handling the public schools, municipal buildings, and single-family dwellings. My understanding is that the other units that have it, they have it under other pretenses, not because the select board necessarily gave it to them.
Kind of hit and miss. A few were sort of imposed upon the town, and then a few were, after that happened, the solid waste ordinance was updated, and then a few have been, have requested this, and the board has authorized it.
Does anybody want to do this? I don't think we should. I don't think we should set a precedent either. But then, I think if we vote down, I think we send it to legal review to make sure we don't have a problem legally. That was one of the suggestions. I think it's a good one, yeah. So probably we should vote and then send it to the lawyers and see if, make sure it's constitutional.
Just make the vote, send it to the lawyers, period. We'll get their opinion first. If we get the money first and the lawyers after, we're putting the cart before the horse, or the horse after the cart. I would just assume go to lawyers first, get a solid answer, and then
Okay,
after that, we'll have some good information.
That makes sense too.
That's my motion.
A second.
Okay. Motion by Mark, second by Allison. Any further comments? We got enough information for the lawyers, right?
Yeah, I think I've got enough that I can draft a response and have them.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay.
Maybe a quick follow-up question for the group. Should we include a proposed revision to the solid waste ordinance to either change or remove the clause about new condominium developments? Or would you like to keep the language as is?
I think it's definitely, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's definitely something to think about, talk about. As far as making a decision now, I think we need to dig a little deeper into the subject matter and figure out what would work the best for us before we start and go that way. That's my thought.
Yeah, I guess, go ahead. No, go ahead. Okay.
We probably should hear what the lawyer has to say in general about it in the first place before we go and change, but that,
What's the specific language that you have a problem with, Adam?
It's fairly vague. So right now it says the town may
You're
collect.
doing it on a case-by-case basis
Right.
every
We don't do
time
that.
now.
Versus just saying, these are the things that we support and we don't.
Any, as of date X, no new private road collection request shall be submitted, something.
I'll just say it out loud. If the lawyer says that we're good with saying no, then yeah, I think we should change the language.
Yeah.
We can bring a draft back.
so we don't have to do this every couple weeks,
Yeah.
'cause that's what will end up happening.
Yeah.
So Mark added that to his motion. Right?
Yep, we sure did, and I second it still.
And we're all in favor, right?
All in favor? Aye.
Okay. All right, I'll work with Derek and we'll get something.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're up, Derek, when you're ready.
All right, at tab 6A, you have a revised consent agenda that was distributed this evening. For employee status reports, you have a per diem EMT separation. You have a full-time firefighter that completed a paramedic certification, a full-time firefighter. This is a transfer from a per diem EMT, and then you have a separation of a seasonal laborer at DPW. You have cemetery rights to inter in Shirley Hill Cemetery, cremation garden section 1, lot 12, and section 3, lot 517A. Then at West Lawn Cemetery, you have section 1998, lot 246 and lot 245, and then section 1992, lot 182. You have event permits. You have the Mountain Based Brewery Car Show on August 1st, Goffstown Main Street Uncommon Art on the Common, August 1st, St. Anselm College home football games, multiple dates through September through November. Glen Lake School 20th anniversary event on September 26th. Goffstown Main Street program Friday night under the lights on December 4th. Goffstown Main Street program's first night New Year's Eve celebration on December 31st. And then you have a deposit voucher for the Grassmere Town Hall Restoration Fund.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Motion by Josh, second by Mark. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
At tab 6B, you have the finance director has given you proposed revisions to the town's revenue and collection turnover policy. This year, the state law changed that the limits being remitted changed up to $3,500. Currently, it's $500 for offices except for town clerk and tax collectors, $1,500. But it would move both to that the funds need to be turned over when it's $3,500 or at least on a weekly basis. And you have a red line in your packet.
So, I'm not a big fan of the weekly basis. I think we should be doing nightly deposits because we're losing interest on it, for one. And I'm also worried about how much cash is sitting in particular places for too long.
Eric, when Kathy was here, did she go to the bank every day?
So this is a turnover policy to turn it over to the treasurer, not necessarily a deposit, get it into the bank. This
So it's
is
delaying it even further. Is that what I'm understanding? Like if it's taking them a week to get over?
They come over and our finance department is doing, this is mostly for the miscellaneous. So our town clerk and our tax collector are making deposits daily. On some days, they're making multiple deposits. The other departments are transfer station, our building office, police department. They're bringing them over. They get secured at town hall. And then when somebody's able to enter them into the finance software, they enter them into the finance software, and then they're deposited into the account. So finance is doing that on a weekly basis or more. So there are multiple batches that are being deposited on a weekly basis, but they're not doing it on a daily basis.
Each department's not bringing theirs here daily.
Correct. They'll bring a couple of them, or like building, you get one a week most weeks, because we don't get a lot of cash. Most of it is checks that come in.
I do think we should still be doing it daily. Having seen the numbers.
The statute, the statute says weekly, or they want to change it to $3,500. So we're complying with the statute.
But the statute's very specific to town clerk relative to motor vehicles, I thought. Let's see. Yeah, vehicle permit fees. It does not state that it's specific to all clerks.
I don't think we have significant fees in the clerk's office that generate that much cash on a daily basis. A dog permit is less than $10, a dog license, marriage license, those aren't generating the...
Those aren't generating. But the policy here is basically revenue collection across the entire town.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so we're applying something that is $3,500 now that was specific to vehicle registrations, correct, now to everybody.
We are trying to change it consistent with the law that was passed in Concord. So that's what we're trying to do, stay consistent with that, but ultimately it's up to the select board to decide if they want to maintain current levels.
We haven't had any problems that I'm aware of with the current system.
Correct. I did look through some of the July submittals. We may have to have some of the departments dedicate employees to make trips over to town hall more frequently.
And that's my question. Who is dedicated to doing that?
So each department has like PD has their courier, DPW, when they have somebody bring down, they have that and they sign it over to the finance office.
Because I think there should be a primary and a secondary for each department. So that way somebody always is making sure that those are ran over daily.
Does it have to go daily, or can we wait till we get to the 3,500?
Well,
It's once a week.
Well, currently it's $500.
it's $500 for each
Yep.
department to come over, but they're not, from what I saw, it's not happening all the time.
There were a couple of deposits. I selected one batch and there was a couple of deposits. One had a deposit of $700. When you looked at the individual receipts, it was 2 days in a row. So when they hit that $500 threshold, and then, so.
But it's anecdotal. I did talk to another department, and I got a sense that it happened before as well. So I think that those should be coming over daily. And when they come over daily, so what I'm hearing is that it then goes to finance. Finance then puts it in the system. Then it goes into the bank.
Yes, they've got to, they're hand keying in every check, who's coming from and which charge code it's hitting.
But deposits aren't happening until it's after it's entered in, and then it goes.
Correct, yep.
And does that happen daily or weekly?
They're doing,
Multiple times a week.
yeah, multiple times a week.
It's not every.
It's not every,
Like if payroll's happening,
yep.
it may be the next day.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like the sense that we're also losing by not getting it all in the bank as quickly as possible.
I
Because we get interest.
don't think we're gaining interest off of those accounts. The interest that you're seeing for general fund revenue is when we're transferring it out of pooled cash and we're putting it into PDIP or the investment accounts.
So none of that revenue goes into an interest-bearing account?
No, what it does is it writes off the fees. By having a higher daily balance, we have reduced bank fees. And then the treasurer will make transfers into those investment accounts. this time of year, when we're having significant property taxes, he's making weekly transfers, but then as we start paying out to the school and the county and paying our own bills, he starts drawing that money back over into pooled cash.
Is it just, it's just a regular employee from the other departments that brings that over, right?
Yes.
So doing it on a daily basis is taking away from, I'm assuming they have other responsibilities that they're doing.
Yep.
It just seems crazy to have them run over for like a $70 check or something. You know what I mean? To take away from whatever job.
But we can't talk about
daily basis.
details. I think it's more than $70.
Okay.
Does Finance Director, I hear you moaning up there. You want to come up and join the conversation?
Or right,
Right.
Deputy Treasurer. Good evening. So just to clarify, the red line is actually only to correct the quotes from the RSAs. The RSAs are quoted in the policy, and that's what we're trying to do, is match the policy to actually have the correct RSA for the reference. As far as the board wanting to add additional thresholds, perhaps, that might be lower than the RSA, that would actually be additional language that's not before you here this evening, which we're happy to do, and we can outline if there's certain exceptions. As Derek had said, I can confirm we're having daily deposits, sometimes multiple times a day for large revenues such as tax. Motor vehicle closes out every day because of the state transfer, and we're getting much smaller revenue from, building department, library, police department, things like that. The only time that the thresholds may come into account is whether you're looking at cash or cash and checks. Obviously, checks made out to the town are less of a control concern than cash, but they are secured at departments until they're transferred to finance, and then they're secured in finance until they're processed. They are processed nearly daily. We're doing deposits on a regular basis. If someone's out for a day, or if there's something else like payroll that's more time consuming or time sensitive, a deposit may be delayed to the next day. But I can tell you we've had an improvement in the regularity of the deposits, and to the point that last year the auditors actually commented on how much more timely those are happening.
Are you comfortable with the system as it is?
I am. I think the only concern, as far as making it match the RSAs, one, making sure that the reference we have from the RSA is correct, but two, making sure that we're capturing, the RSA doesn't specify if it's cash, checks, credit cards. Technically, all of those come over on the same turnover sheet. Nobody really is too worried about the credit cards because they're a direct deposit. It's just an accounting side of things. But, as far as the transfers, it should include cash and checks. And if that's the case, we may be tripping over those thresholds because a single residential property, one collection, and you've reached your 3,500.
In the list that we got, I don't see the credit cards in here.
They're on the slips. They're keyed into the same deposit. I just don't know.
They don't show up on the
broken out.
batch report because it's a different transfer because it already.
Yeah, the departments note them on there, and they're entered into our system so that we can account for them in the GL. But they're obviously not remitted separately. They don't have receipts that they have to turn over for them.
Mark?
So as the money arrives here, would it be easier if we were to break it up, a complete sheet for checks and one for cash, or no? Okay.
No, yeah, it works well in that the departments can break down every receipt and give us a total summary of their accounts. That's working well. We are getting a different, for, say, transfer station, they're doing a closeout at the end of each day, so we get a report and a breakdown by day, just like we do from tax and sewer and town clerk. The only ones that really do less than that are building department and planning department, those lower volume ones. PD also is doing weekly.
So the RSA that is referenced in our policy does not differentiate between checks, cash, or credit. It's
Correct.
pretty much monies, so all collected amounts.
Right.
Which, Derek, for you know, what I saw, like, that didn't include credit there, so I would assume that the numbers are even larger than what Jim and I saw.
Yeah. Yeah, the credit cards are processed, like, we don't handle the money at all. The credit card processor is a third party. They deposit directly into the account, and then we get our daily report by group. So like Parks and Rec is separate from EMS, is separate from town clerk. And then we have to reconcile those reports to our internal reports and make a manual journal entry on our side. So there's not a remittance so much from the department on that side, but it is a collection that's credited to those revenue lines.
Have we had auditors look at our system,
Yes.
and they're okay?
Yeah, they're very happy with the controls we have outlined in our policy and the controls that we have internally on our tracking sheets and our reports internally. They follow the deposits. They always pick a sample, and they'll follow it from point of collection all the way through to the bank and verify it on the bank statement to see timing of each step.
So, my comment on the policy is, according to the way that it was written in here, which does, as far as I can tell, does not exactly match the RSA. It states the treasurer shall ensure that all monies remitted shall be deposited at least weekly basis or daily whenever remitted from all departments. Collectively totals, and it was 1,500, and you're saying 3,500. So if we think about all departments, and if I look at all the sums, like, we are basically getting close to daily anyways. So I don't know why we're even arguing if it should be weekly or daily, because we're already hitting the numbers, so it should be daily.
Yeah, so there's different parts. So the treasurer is doing their remittance daily. Like I said, except for if there is, you know, somebody's out. I'm just saying that there could be a scenario where a deposit is left till the next day. It's pretty rare. The other ones quoted are more for the departments turning over to the treasurer, and those other references on the RSA are for the levels that those departments have to turn over, which the RSAs for the department turnover to the treasurer says weekly or once they hit a threshold.
So it could be daily even if we don't do anything other than raise the limit.
That's what I'm saying, it's basically daily now. I don't know why we're even,
Well,
like, discussing it. We should just say that it should be daily.
I think the only issue would be
Or nothing.
like,
It's gonna happen anyways, even if we
But
don't
it's not happening.
So if you go to daily, what we're gonna do at town hall is the treasurer and the deputy treasurer will never be out of the office on the same day. That functionally, operationally, that would be the change that we would make. And the last 15 minutes of every day, they would be,
they'd probably have to stay open longer than other departments because of the timing. So, you know, if town clerk's closing out at 4:15 and securing and they're safe to turn over at 8 a.m., well, the treasurer's here till 4.
Could we modify it so that it has to happen the next morning versus it being at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on how you want to word it in the policy. I mean, I think, again, it comes down to, do you want daily applied to something where building department doesn't get checks, but we're getting basically reports saying that there's 0 to prove that they didn't have anything until...
But it's not about each department, because of the way that it's written, it says that the treasurer shall ensure that all monies remitted shall be deposited at least weekly basis or daily whenever funds remitted from all departments collectively totals 3,500 or more.
Can we pass the motion as written, and can you take a look at, or can you document how it works out for a few months to see if we are close to daily, or how it works out? Is that too much work, or is it something we can take a look at? And
But Jim, I think we're missing the point.
Maybe?
It already is stating that when they're at $3,500 that they're supposed to be remitting it daily. If you look at the numbers, which doesn't currently, the ones I saw don't have credit, which would include all of it, all departments collectively are totaling probably more than 3,500.
well, we don't include the credit because those are already deposited.
Those are deposited directly to the bank.
Those are deposited to the bank.
And then the other...
So those are not, the only, what we're getting is we're getting check, money,
Right.
money orders.
And we need to modify the policy to state when all checks, money orders, and cash equals 3,500, because this says all monies.
Yeah. I think the other thing to your point, Josh, you're talking about collectively across all departments. I mean, the town clerk being open automatically is more than 3,500.
Automatically.
So you're saying if they have 3,500, I don't care if the PD collects $5, they better run it down here because now we have 3,505. Like that's where it becomes impractical, I think, in the interpretation.
But I'm saying the way the policy's written, that's the way it states it right now. And we're already over that.
Yeah, they're remitting the town clerk daily and tax collectors daily. So then it's really those other miscellaneous ones that may not even hit 3,500. And I can definitely bring it back to the treasurer who drafted the changes to confirm. The way I read it with the italicized was that he was doing a direct quote of the RSA, but I didn't pull up the RSA as we were discussing this to compare. He may be paraphrasing that, but I can bring back the concerns from the board.
Because you start to get over on the other side, HB 118, that's the House bill.
Mhm.
And it says all departments total $3,500 or more. And then on the subsequent pages, which is the final version, it specifically calls out monies received for vehicle permit fees. The clerk shall officially remit all fees collected to the town or city treasurer or the treasurer's designee, provided RSA 41:29(6), at least a weekly or daily basis, whenever permit fees receive 3,500 or more.
Right.
That one doesn't specifically say all monies.
Right, and that one is happening daily. Turning over to the treasurer daily, yes.
So I would suggest that either we modify the policy to allow some leniency for those departments to then come in the subsequent morning, or everybody needs to do daily based upon the way it's worded right now.
You need to talk to the treasurer?
Well, I mean, it's up to the will of the board. I mean, the RSA also says that the selectmen shall be responsible for establishing the procedures, so
Right.
I think that's what Josh is referring to, the procedure choice.
Yeah, I personally don't want to have any of you have to stay extra at the end of the night to get it, but right now, the way it's written, it would require you to do that.
At least on a weekly basis, we're doing it.
So right now, I believe that same paragraph, page 3.
On the
5
policy?
Of the policy?
Yep.
Is that what you're referring to, that second kind of paragraph where it says at least weekly departments shall remit daily?
Yeah.
Unless otherwise instructed by RSA?
Yep. So I think you have the two statements in there that basically are dictating based upon the amount of cash flow that's coming in now, that you're required for all departments to basically do it because it's a sum of all departments.
I would disagree. 4129 is funds that have been remitted to the treasurer already, and it's saying the treasurer shall deposit them. 41.9 is when a department has money that's more than 3,500, they have to bring it over. So it's when does it get to the treasurer versus, so if a department collects $3,000, let's say the transfer station has a busy Saturday, they have $3,000, they secure that, and then maybe the next day they're open, they're getting 500. At that point, they're bringing 3,500, they're remitting it to the treasurer, and now 4129 kicks in for the treasurer that he then has to deposit it. He can't necessarily wait for other deposits.
Right.
I think you're right, yeah.
And that's what we're seeing now with most departments doing a weekly transmission to the treasurer.
Yeah, tax collector, town clerk, obviously, they're right across the hall. They're also much higher volume, much higher dollar figures. So
And
they're
they-
doing it
yeah.
on a daily basis.
And they have specific RSAs for
And
each of
we have to
those.
turn over the state money
Daily.
daily.
So, which brings us back to raising the amount from 1,500 to 3,500.
To match the statutory language, and then what we would do is report to ensure compliance. By
So
all
where in the
departments.
policy does it state how frequently each of the departments have to bring it over?
It has to be weekly, and this is out of state law. They have to bring it over weekly, or when they hit $3,500 in funds.
But you said 500, so where's the 500 amount that was stated earlier?
Currently, the 500 is
It's under
the red line.
41.9.
It's under 41.9 and 41.29.
And you want to raise that to 3,500?
I want to match the statutory
The statute
language.
says- Line 4 of the statute.
And if the board wants to maintain it at $500, that is something you have this is your procedure, this is your policy. If you would want to maintain it at $500, what I would suggest is a rewrite, because right now, these are references to current law. What I would say is, we would put in another section that say the select board is choosing not to use the maximum limit authorized by law, and you're instead doing $500, and you would have to ensure the departments are following that.
Would that then mean if the DPW had a busy Saturday, they'd have to come over 4 times
They would
potentially?
They would come down every day.
The
It's
tricky
still just
part
once a
too-
day, not multiple times, not
Right.
every time they
Yeah.
reached 500, but just,
Yeah.
I just got waved up from the folks up there. The one big concern, I think, is where the department that's open, well, PD, I suppose, but they don't really have a huge after-hours revenue type thing. We do, so Saturday for the transfer station of the concern. A big day there is 1,500, I think, so certainly well over 500 though. So then the question would be, are we outside of policy if we don't somehow call somebody into town hall to accept that remittance or that CTF on a Saturday afternoon? And then is the treasurer in a tough spot if our deposit on Saturday has triggered the daily remittance? So you may want to either look at the statutory amounts, because we won't, right now anyway, forever's a long time, but right now, we don't hit that 3,500 on a single day, so that's the good news. Other thing, food for thought, is whether or not we talk about cashless transfer station operations. Okay, thanks. But that is a way to get rid of that problem, certainly.
Well, that's kind of my concern, Adam, is like we're keeping cash on hand in places.
Yep.
And I don't think, that's also a safety concern. Like, I have a lot of reasons as to why keeping cash around in places is not a good idea. So,
So for Saturdays, take it from where it's coming, get a depository box, mount it permanently in the building. Somebody from highway can come up, undo it, put it in, drop it, and it doesn't bother you guys. It just, flow keeps going back to DPW. We're just, that's a suggestion.
Without getting too much into operational security, I think we have a better, safer solution as currently operated.
I've
but-
seen it, and I do agree with the cashless option would be better. Especially since a lot of people aren't carrying cash all over the place now. But as far as this is concerned, we don't have to adopt the 3,500. I think it's actually a safety concern to keep that much cash on hand.
I think, again, it's not specifically cash, but it includes checks, right?
Well, it says, it doesn't say checks or cash. It
It just says,
says,
The RSA uses funds and monies depending on
Yeah.
which specific law you're in.
So I am okay,
And with the checks.
I'm okay with the first line to the point you made out, Derek. I don't know if I'm still okay with the, when people are remitting. Could it be more than $500? Sure. I don't know if $3,500 is the right number.
What page you on, Josh?
It's on 3 of 5, so Derek's talking about, so 1 is basically when they remit it back to the treasurer, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, 41.9 is when departments will remit it to the treasurer. 41.29 is when the treasurer will deposit it.
So basically, by making them the same, as soon as they get the money, they're automatically required to go deposit it, is what that's causing to happen.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and again, that red line is really just for the excerpt from the RSA, but if at the top of that paragraph you say at least weekly, department shall remit daily revenues, you could add there if you want a lesser threshold by department.
I think I personally would be okay with like $1,000 if we needed to raise it up. Because I know that you guys probably aren't always hitting that threshold.
Yeah, I think based on the sample, like a Saturday would be maybe
Right.
1,500.
The other days, we can make it work either first thing in the morning or end of the day or whatever, because they're still here. Saturdays becomes the problem.
Would the board be amenable to $3,500 in funds or $1,000 in cash? The RSA doesn't make but I think what I'm hearing is you're worried about the cash on hand.
Yeah.
So if they have a big cash day, that's triggering a remittance to the treasurer.
Does
Then
that
what's the plan on Saturday?
They are securing it at the end of the day. They're securing it, and then, because even if when a town clerk or something, we can't make a deposit when the bank is closed.
They're
Right?
closed.
Yeah, they're closed.
So I think the language needs to be updated so that you have to secure it until the next business day to deliver.
Okay.
does that clear up your?
Yeah, we can rewrite and bring it back to a future meeting.
Yeah, I understand the direction.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
how would the cash is that?
I think the board
You
just
tell me to
decides.
do it.
The board makes a vote.
Is there a cost to it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's an enormous cost, isn't it?
So we currently at the transfer station have credit card machine, so we can accept payments that way. The questions that you'd have to suss out would be if you do go truly cashless, are you still accepting checks, which most places do, still, if they go to the cashless. And similar to town clerk, are there fees that you want to do a better job of explaining to the public about what we're not
Because we charge a fee upstairs on
a
that.
little bit, because that's what they charge
Are we
us.
charging a fee at DPW?
Yes,
It's stated on there.
it
their
is.
side.
I think if we were to go cashless, we'd want to do a little bit more outreach for that piece, just because there isn't any other option other than check if we. And then the other thing to figure out would be regular DPW revenues. We don't have credit card processing in the DPW office. There would be a cost to that if we wanted to go cashless there. Anything else I'm forgetting?
DPW though, 99% of what we see from the DPW office is checks.
Right.
Almost everything is checks that goes to the DPW office. I can't remember the last time Kara had cash for something.
Right, not very often.
I think before making that decision, what we could maybe do is, and hopefully Adam could get his software, is give you an idea of how many cash transactions you're seeing, and maybe a look at some of the other transfer stations in the area of what they have for policies, because if you all of a sudden become the first cashless transfer station, you may get some negative political blowback on that.
There's, just to kind of give you a quick sense, there are a few that already are cashless. There are one or two that have a third rail option, which I don't love, which is where they send people to town hall to get punch books. They pay on the town clerk software, and then they bring the punch book.
Yeah, that one
down.
sounds like it's a joke.
So I don't want to make it any harder for sure. But yeah, I can certainly bring back more info if that's the way you'd like to proceed, because it certainly makes our job easier.
Would you like to hear more info, Jim?
Specifically at the transfer
He wants to know
station,
if I want
separate
more
of
info.
Yeah.
the DPW.
On a punch book?
Oh, not on punch book, on the cashless options.
No, I'm all right. So they're gonna bring it back to us next meeting or a couple of meetings, whatever.
We'll bring the revised revenue collection and turnover policy
Okay,
with the changes you requested.
All right, thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah, maybe Danielle, you should sit here, we're doing propane next.
Okay.
And propane accessories.
So our current contract for propane is ending August 31st of '27, so we do have some time. But taking a look at the values, the school just went out to bid and they got a good value, so we asked our energy consultants if now is a good time to lock in further terms. So before you, the spreadsheet that was added shows you the supplier has given us two options, a 12-month or a 20-month term. It is with the same supplier because they own the tanks. So if we were to change suppliers, there's an additional cost of swapping out the tanks or taking ownership, buying out the tanks and things like that. At this time though, their rates are quite favorable. So as you can see, there is a slight increase, but a current term is $1.44 per gallon, and they're looking at a 20-month term of $1.53.89, so about 10 cents more a gallon, but that would lock us in for another 20 months beyond 27. So it's giving us some surety and planning that we can account for in the next two winter cycles beyond 27.
So our 2027 rate is cheaper than the 2026 rate? Is that what I'm reading on?
No, it's the same. Yes, correct.
Okay. So it's cheaper than what we have now.
It is, yes.
But you're saying in order to get to 2028, we'd end up increasing some.
A little bit, about 10 cents per gallon.
But it still would be
But it would get us
cheaper
to-
than 2026.
Yeah, and it would get us to 29. It would get us to 2 additional heating seasons.
Okay.
So heating season of
And were they the lowest price or?
They were a very favorable price. They have continued to be lowest. However, this time around, because of the additional cost of the tank ownership and the swap out of tanks, some providers would say we won't service somebody else's tank, so Denver will come and get the tank. You have to get a new tank installed. There's fees.
Are they in ground?
Some of them are in ground, and some of them are above. I think Grassmere might be above ground. Yeah,
But most of them are in ground.
yeah.
Town Hall has an above ground, but it's, behind the little fence out here.
That's for the generator.
Yep, and,
Very small usage and,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but considering that the rates were so favorable, they were recommending, locking it in, even though it's technically a 10-cent increase on the 27 rate. To your point, it's still 10 cents lower than our 26 rate and locks us in for a couple more heating seasons.
I'll make a motion authorizing Petto Energy Services to accept the lowest bid for propane, to authorize the Assistant Town Administrator to sign the necessary paperwork and ensure the rates are secure for a period of 20 additional months?
I'd say 20, yeah. We had 12 because we weren't sure if they'd be willing to go further,
Yeah.
but their quote came in with a 20-month.
With the lower bidder, with the low bid, I'm not going to say lower bid, the low bid as presented to extend our current contract.
Second.
Motion by Josh, second by Allison. Any further comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, old business. We've got 2 things under old business, and I think the first one, yeah, I was a little confused reading this. What we should do with this, these are the
So these are the
policy of the
NHMA.
NHMA, right?
Yes,
And
look, yep.
do we need to somehow motion that we accept them, or?
You can motion that you accept them as presented, or you could, if there's a certain one that you do not want to support, you could call that out and direct your voting delegate, whoever your voting delegate's going to be, to, not support that. There are many voting delegates that have specific instructions on each item throughout that they might vote against. So what I'm really looking for is some type of concurrence from the board on the policy, and then also to name a voting delegate. I've acted on the town's behalf at the last two, but if there is a select board member that prefers to do it, we can definitely register them in my place.
And if there isn't, are you willing to do it?
Yes, yep.
Can we make a motion of the delegate first?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to have Derek Horn, our director, town administrator, to act as the delegate on behalf of the Goffstown Select Board at the NHMA meeting.
Second.
Motion by Josh, second by Mark. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations, Derek.
And then I guess the question, as your voting delegate, does the board are there any items in here that the board does not necessarily agree with?
So on the 13th one, Derek, on page 20 of 20 here, is that basically so we can stop putting stuff on the ballot? I just want to get clarity on that one. To like re-adopt the state laws as local options without having to like...
No, I think this is a little bit, so what we saw a few years ago was Keno was an option that was given to communities and they could opt in or not opt in. So this is the idea that rather than the legislature mandating towns and cities to do things, whether it be housing or other things, they're saying give the towns the option and then let the towns.
You mean give local control back?
Yes.
Okay. Versus it being mandated at the state?
Yes.
Okay. I'll agree with that one.
I looked through these, I did pretty much everything that we, as towns, would want versus the state, no downsizing and that kind of stuff.
Where was the one around substances?
I think that is on page, yeah, they had a substantial change. This actually generated a lot of discussion 2 years ago when this came up.
Page 5?
Yes, page 5 of 20. I expect that this one will generate a lot of discussion at the legislative meeting as well.
And these red lines are ours, Derek?
No, these are the red lines that are changed from the 2025-2026
Got it.
NHMA policies. So there was significant discussion 2 years ago about this, whether or not towns and cities wanted to support sale and use of cannabis. I think what they tried to do is kind of split it. They're not necessarily taking a position. They're not taking a position necessarily, but they are asking that you still retain the authority at the community level if the state does go to that model.
And do we think that's mainly from like a zoning perspective, like where we can?
Yeah, I think a little bit zoning. It's also probably the law enforcement would have I know the police chiefs have come out pretty strongly against sale and use of cannabis in New Hampshire, so.
You don't have access to the LSRs yet when you go to the,
So there may be some LSRs, but it's just the subject.
yeah.
You
so
know, it's like that one line of somebody,
Yeah, yeah.
you don't, and I think after the election, the new representatives have about a week where they can submit LSRs as well.
You meet before that, so you
Yes,
don't
we
have
meet
that. Yeah,
before
okay,
that, so we
right.
don't have the LSRs. We've got to kind of look at the past session to see what's available.
Gotcha.
I'll make a motion to accept these as they stand.
Second.
Yeah, in a general sense, I don't see anything that we can really object to, so. So, motion by Josh, second by Allison. Any further comments?
Mark is out.
What's that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And then it's, the second old business under tab 7A2 is the draft letter to the Hillsborough County of Commissioners regarding the Hillsborough County Jail Study.
I read it, went through it.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I mean, I would personally word it more strongly, but, it's a negotiation, so.
Yeah, I think for a start,
Yes.
we shouldn't
There may be follow-up.
kick them yet. Just make our concerns known. But
I don't know if I want to kick them necessarily. Like, while I don't love
No.
having another jail, or prison like we had before, I do think that there are opportunities for us to have discussions with them about how this plays out.
yeah, and that's basically what we're asking for.
Sure,
Yeah.
yep, and I think it would be helpful if we just sort of use this as an opportunity to reevaluate the relationship between the county and the town. There's a need for the jail, but as things stand right now, with the relationship that we have with the county right now, I view it as something that I just completely object to on every level. If I could wave a magic wand, there's no way I would tolerate a jail in this town. Never, ever.
Okay.
Feel the same way, leave it in Manchester. We don't want any more headaches.
Yeah,
I just feel like it's so different than, like everyone keeps saying, well, we used to have the women's prison here, but it's a very different clientele when you have a prison where it's long-term and it's not this constant turnover versus the jail that is where people come sometimes just for a couple days or leaving again, coming back. It's a different scenario altogether.
right. And I don't disagree with what anybody's saying, but I'm just saying to start off with, with some civility, relate our concerns
agree.
and everything, and then
Yes.
may come down to all that, It may
Yes.
come down to a fist fight, but,
Yeah.
I hope not.
me too.
Yeah, I think this is pretty well worded,
Yes.
and based upon the commentary I've seen online, I think a majority of the state reps also are not in favor of this.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
right.
I agree.
But I will say that, this is not happening tomorrow.
Yep.
It's not in next year's budget.
Yep.
Right.
So this is something that it would take a discussion in a while to happen anyway. So I think making this a critical moment online or here is probably not something that's needed.
So I'll make a motion to send this letter as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Richard, second by Josh. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. New business.
Budget discussion.
Yeah.
So when you met with the budget committee back in May, at the conclusion of the meeting, both boards said, let's get together prior to starting 2027 budget. Let's, kind of talk about what are priorities, some discussion over capital reserve fund, and a a budget target. The Budget Committee Chair suggested a joint meeting on Tuesday, August 18th. So I guess a question for this board, is that an acceptable date or is there an alternative date? We definitely want to avoid the last weeks of August and the first week of September because you will be busy with the state primary. Additionally, does this board want to set budget targets for town departments?
So, at least on the 18th, I will be out of town that day. So I would not be able to attend that one. I don't know where everybody else is.
We can look for some alternative. What we were looking at really was Tuesday evenings. Those are pretty light for municipal committees, and that's already a regular meeting. So we can work with the Budget Committee Chair and see if there's some other Tuesdays that might work.
Would it be starting at 6, 7?
I think they're moving their meetings to 7.
They were proposing to do the joint one at 6,
Okay.
and then their regular meeting's at 7, but if
If
moving
7,
it back a
yeah.
little bit was better, I'm sure they'd be.
Okay, so you'll check that up?
Yeah, we can get some alternative dates, and I can reach out to each of you and just see if there are any no-goes.
Budget committee starting their meetings at 7? Is that what
That's
you're
kind of
saying?
crazy.
When-
That's what
when was
the
that
chair.
discussed?
It has not been discussed. That's what
Oh,
the chair is
Okay, I
considering.
missed that one.
Yeah.
7?
You'll be like me with the planning board.
No, that's a horrible idea.
Yeah, right, I was
Just going
thinking the
on
same
record
thing.
with that.
It's one thing if it's the Conservation Commission
Yeah.
or something like that when it's
Right,
half an
budget
hour,
committee
but
goes well into the night.
My meetings have never.
I think
happened.
she's also looking at limits on time to make the meetings.
So she just wants she wants me to be at 3 meetings a week for like 8 weeks, 10 weeks, is what you're saying. Okay, it's a discussion for another time.
And then there is, again, the question for, does this board want to set budget targets for town departments? At this point, the Library Board of Trustees is going to be working on their budget. The Parks and Recs Commission will be working on their budget over the next 2 months. What does the board want to do for budget expectations for non-union step increases or matrix adjustments? Is there any other budget-related topics that the board wants to tackle and provide guidance on?
Well, isn't that kind of what we're going to talk about with the budget committee?
I think what Derek's asking is, do we want to get ourselves in a position to be ahead of the curve versus trying to discuss and figure it out there? So, I think, and I proposed one last year, and I think it's up for discussion, is like, do we put a target of 5%? Because we came in at, what, 11, 14%?
I think it's 13.
Like
It was
it-
me that made the 13%.
Yeah, so it was 13%,
Yeah.
then it went down to 11, then we went down to 7, then we were still up, and that wasn't close. We got down to 5 at the budget committee last year. Honestly, I think we should be starting at 5 here, and then having discussions with them to make sure that we're in point.
I disagree with that, sorry.
That's okay.
could, the idea of maybe starting at 7 or 8% so that then when the budget committee gets their hand at it, it's more of a, we come up with our priorities, but then they can come up with the, financial taxpayer view on which priorities need to be scaled back, looking at, what it will actually cost the town.
That's kind of what we did last year. We put it all in and then let them look at it and then kind of, we figured it would be chiseled down.
We started at higher than that, though.
No, I agree, but that was the reason, like, we knew it was gonna be all chopped down, so let's let everybody see what the options are before we start chopping.
But that kind of gets
That
back
didn't go over well,
to,
so.
I guess the problem with that, though, is that it gets back to the core argument of why are we not prioritizing everything the town needs? Why are we trying to anticipate objections and just leave them out when we know it's our job to figure out what the priorities of the town are and to put them forward for public approval?
Right,
And
that's the problem, is that we didn't come in hard on that to begin with. And I think, you said 7 or 8%, I said 5%, like maybe we should shoot for 6.
You think 13%?
Oh, I'll say 7 or 8, because it's gonna get cut down, cut back, and we'll be, probably by the time we're done, 5%, 4%, who knows?
I think it's probably gonna be, they're gonna be pushing more for like 3%.
Yeah. So
I just think that at 5%, we're starting with needs left out.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. And, but we don't want to get to start by making everybody angry, being so high that we're making everybody angry, and then
Right.
it's a fist fight. So, what do you think?
she's thinking.
Someone has to.
I don't know. I probably tend to lean more to what Mark, I think, thinks. Because I probably was one of the few budget committee members last year that wasn't mad that you sent us a 13% budget. I was mad because I knew it was going to take us a lot of work because there was no way everyone around me would agree to any of it. But I personally liked the idea that I could see what you got, like what the town needed. If we constantly just give this 2% increase, there's never a discussion about the fact that we're missing out on things, or our departments are missing out on things, or our residents are missing out on things because we're stuck in this, 2%.
I think at 2%, we're gonna maybe get into another default budget, and it could be a cycle every year.
Right. But how do you get your point across about what we actually need for funding when we don't talk about it?
That's the point.
That's where, I mean, again, I don't think we can walk in with 13, but 6 or 7.
So,
You sneaking that on us, Danielle?
if we're gonna do 7 or 8%, my recommendation would still be put a cut line at the 5%. So that way there's a prioritization on the things below.
Yep.
What are the things that are must-have, and where's that cut line? And here are the things that we can discuss, and here's what the impact is if we don't go do it. I don't think it should be broad-brushed, stroked 7 or 8%, because we're still gonna have the same problem we had last year. So we need to go on with some sort of prioritization. The only reason I'm saying 5% is because even with businesses, you typically don't just say, oh, revenue is infinite, and you set a target, and you say, this is where we're gonna go.
Would you cap it at 8%? 8 and 5?
I think 8% is way too much. I know that there's some disagreements, but I think what we should discuss with them, if we are gonna go over the 5%, how is it gonna smooth out the following years? Especially if we do some of the rental agreements or something like that, Adam has proposed for the trash pickup. Like, we may end up going over that, but we need to talk about, here's what we can do, here's the cut list, which is, we can go over this a little bit this year, but then we'll smooth it out next year. And that's where I think we need to get to the discussion at, because if we don't, it's just gonna be, hey, we're looking for money this year, and we're gonna look for money next year. We're not talking about the actual 2 to 3 year plan. So if we're gonna go for a 7 or 8%, it needs to be, the cut lines here, like, we could do with this and survive. However, if you want us to smooth out the budget, these are the things we're gonna have to do.
Now, you want to say something, Daniel?
Just to clarify, because the question that we have in the back of the room is, when we talk about percentages, are we talking about a % increase over this current, which is a default budget? Are we looking at a % increase between next year's default budget and what we're proposing? Or are we talking about a % increase between the operating budget to the operating budget, with CIP being a separate discussion? So just, when we say percentage, I just want to make sure we're looking at the
Good
correct
point.
percentage to come to you guys with.
Me personally, I don't know, like, you guys have done budgets before in other places, but typically it's 5% of the overall budget. Like, it's CapEx and OpEx included in that year. It's like, here's your budget.
Total appropriation.
And then it's broken out to say, here's your CapEx budget, here's your OpEx budget.
Mhm.
That's typically what happens.
Be okay with that?
Yeah, we just
Okay.
want to make sure we know
No,
where
it's
we're
good.
applying
Good
it.
question, yeah.
Yeah, because like, I tried it with my CFO recently. I was like, I planned this much last year, but I didn't spend this much. And she's like, yeah, but you only spent this much, so you need 5%.
The pool is all sitting here. What does that mean
So it means that if your overall budget,
from your default?
the one you're working in now,
In your
Yes.
default budget.
yeah.
We're in default.
Yeah. Call it whatever you want. The budget that your actual operating budget this year, that's what you would do the percentage add-on to.
So you're doing it on a 2-year past budget. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're fighting inflation, for sure.
Yeah.
So you're fighting it. Okay, gotcha.
But this is where they're gonna come from.
That's okay.
Because they're gonna look at what you spent this year. They're not gonna look at, here's the inflationary cost. So if we're gonna have 7%, and I'm okay with 7%, but I want a cut line.
Yeah.
And I want,
I'll go along with the cut line, I have no problems with that, because we've got a certain area to work in, and, you know, that's where we're held at.
the things that are up for discussion.
Yeah,
I think if we
I was
go
just
on-
saying 8% because it gives us more things to put into the, you know, to think about, to put on the table. They're gonna get cut, or maybe not, but 8% allows for more things to be put on the table at the beginning. And
To have
over
them
the
out
cut-
there, kind of like
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah,
about, when
that's-
we
yeah,
hide them all and we
right.
pretend that it's no big deal,
Right.
you're never seeing the fact that you are cutting services. People are not getting everything.
And then if we continue to drop the percentage, somebody's gonna lose out on something. You know, I mean, fun.
I would make a motion that, that we have a 5% cut line with a 7% additional pieces of discussion. And that 5% has to have everything that is a must-have or necessary, be it increases or otherwise. And that the extra 2% at 7 are things that are for discussion and smoothing the budget.
Second? Anybody second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Josh, second by Allison. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No,
Okay, 4
okay.
ayes and
I
1
still love you.
I love you too.
no. And everybody loves each other. Okay.
Where we going, Jim? Where are we going?
Next thing, we're going to action matrix.
Are we talking about?
If you'd like to, you absolutely can. I did
You want to?
include a copy of the department project list. It is not prioritized.
Because this is for what we have in extra this year, yeah?
Yes.
Derek, the one thing, so this is the department project list that we asked for last time.
Yes.
And I did notice that the only department that's not on here is police department. I did call the chief today and ask, and I guess Derek, he spoke to you too
Yes.
about some of it, because I didn't want him to shortchange the department or anything. There are some issues with the police department. You know, we all know about like the locker rooms, the workout facilities.
Ladies' room.
Yeah, my understanding is nothing is in dire straits that it's not functioning. Minus some siding on the outside of the building, I think is what I was told, Derek. I don't know if...
He didn't tell me the specifics. What he said was anything that he has to deal with in 2026, he thinks he'd be able to do out of his budget, his bottom line budget.
But I think he's taken from other places and he's trying to do the best he can with his budget. He's trying to be a fiduciary, like, responsible, like, person. Like, he's trying to do everything that he can. Mainly because he wants to stay focused on the long term, which is he thinks that that facility should be expanded out as a whole, and he doesn't want to spend money on something that is going to be thrown away. But I do think it's several years before we see a police station. So I appreciate everything that the chief is doing. I would say that if like siding's rotting on the side or something like that, that may need to be considered or just brought up with him later on. Or if the locker rooms need to be repainted or something like that. I think some of the major concerns, at least from that side that I heard, and I think we've seen it in other areas, is like sometimes the same people that are working and doing patrols are now being asked to like move furniture and everything else in order to make the facilities better. I think that if we were ever going to pursue that, I think that we, you know, just for the safety of those that are there, that we should consider having it paid for versus it being done out of the department. So, But I did look at this list, and I do think that there are some things that I have questions on. And Derek, I think maybe starting with yours. I know we don't have a updated cost for the revenue collection office, but then we have like the carpet replacement up above. If we did the revenue collection office, wouldn't we have to like impact the carpet anyways in some of those areas?
In some of those areas, yes, yep.
So would it be more prudent to do that one first before you start replacing carpet everywhere?
Yeah, I think the thought with replacing carpet is we could attack it a little bit piecemeal, but if revenue collection was more of a priority of the board, we could dedicate some more resources to coming up with a plan for that.
Yeah, I think my concern right now is that, like, I know we've had some clerks come and go out of there. I know that we have another team inside of your overall department that is also helping out there. Kind of makes sense that we should kind of fix that situation first. So I would love to see a cost on that one to understand what that would entail, so that way we can get more collective, like, and consistent revenue, a team running that.
And that was also brought up, yeah, Derek knows, for the committee, building committees. Didn't we bring that up to have the rugs replaced and changed?
Yeah, joint loss safety has brought that up a couple times, yep.
Yeah, so I don't want to like rip all the carpet up and then have to rip it up again in order to do the revenue collection. So I think we should look at what the revenue collection is, and then we could start to do the piecemeal of the carpets and put that into place.
Understood, yep.
So if we can get a cost update for that one, Derek, it'd be great.
Are there any plans, I'm assuming you've all had a discussion about the revenue collection office before, that maybe I haven't, or am I missing something?
So this was a plan that was brought forward about 10 years ago, and the idea was to merge town clerk, DMV, tax collection, and do cross-training. So instead of having two different offices, you'd have people with a little bit more flexibility. So you could take in those other towns. The town clerk may only focus on vital statistics, dog licensing, and elections, and not be involved with DMV at all. Here, it's worked very good. We've been very fortunate with, over the past 30 years with the people we've had in the town clerk's office. We were really looking at it from a cross-training perspective. That way, there's going to be times where the tax collector is very busy, and it might be great to have an additional clerk to be able to take those payments in.
Yeah, it just gets rid of the risk of any like revenue issues that are coming in.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't realize it wasn't all done in that one office already.
It's not, and when Kathy was here, she was running a lot of stuff over there, right? And now we have a new clerk, and we don't know what's going to happen in a year or two. Like, the clerks could start to change out.
Yeah, clerk is it's an elected position.
Yeah, I know that.
Yep. And we also have a deputy tax collector that's down in the land use building. So depending on vacations and other things, we're kind of pointing customers to 3 or 4 different locations.
It's an inconsistent experience for the taxpayers here in town.
Gotcha.
So, I see Chief's here. On the light that is not working out there, it's out here on this road, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, it's out on Main Street.
Yep.
And so, when a truck is pulling out now, basically what they're having to stop, they're having to like slow down, like what's happening so they don't like cause an accident?
We have 2 lights at either side of the intersection that blink yellow constantly. As the fire trucks leave the Church Street station, Station 1, and turn left towards Main Street, there's a device that sees their lights on and their direction of travel, which then triggers those 2 yellow lights that are blinking to go from yellow to red, with signs that tell the public to stop and stop back at those locations. That currently is not functioning. So just like any other intersection that we come to the intersection, it's a stop, so we don't go through it. We come to a complete stop per our policy, look to make sure nothing's coming, and as we all well know, our 3-axle vehicles, in order to make the turn onto Main Street, have to come into the opposing lane. So we have to make sure that it's clear too.
Any challenges so far with doing that?
Every single day.
Potential accidents?
Every single day.
Every single day, good times. Okay.
How long's that been like that?
Prior to my arrival.
Are there any other lights like that near any of the other fire stations, Chief?
We do have one over at Station 2. My understanding is that is operational.
Can you verify that? It is.
Is there any liability if, like, we end up hitting somebody because that light's not working? I'm just curious.
Probably should ask your
Yeah.
fellow board member about that one, but I'm pretty sure that would be a yes.
He's ignoring the question.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Any liability for us not having that fixed?
Possibly.
Non-committal.
There's a lawyer,
I like it.
there's a lawyer.
That's a great lawyer
Yeah.
answer. Do you have any other questions about that, Josh?
Not on that one. I think we talked about the PFA-free PPEs before,
Yes.
and right now you're
We have-
short some sets.
We have a few more sets. Yes, so we have a few more sets that still have PFAS in them for their first set. All right. Each firefighter is issued 2 sets of gear. We're trying to get at least 1 set PFAS free, but as you saw again tonight, we have someone else, we're losing another full-time firefighter. So we'll have to fill 2 spots now, so it'll be 2 additional sets. If they don't fit in ones that we currently have, but we're trying to do that as much as possible.
Okay. The flagpole in Station 2, is that for the, like, American flag?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Adam, highway, $40,000 to fix that roof on the salt shed? I know roofs are pretty expensive, but wow.
Yes, so that is the geodesic dome.
Rec can do that.
Yeah, I'll have Rick and Mike swing by. That's the quote we got. We just only had one quote just for budgetary purposes, so we may or may not be able to find somebody cheaper. But it is a tricky roof. It's that sort of geodesic golf ball looking thing with a lot of hips, and there's some associated
You did answer,
rot
you did
repair
answer my question.
and sheathing and stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
I would I don't know if this is unselfish or whatever, but I would certainly rank that lower than some of these other projects. But I wanted to at least give you a project that's sort of come up. I'm gonna have to budget some sort of a repair for next year anyway, but that would be the full replacement cost.
Is it large leaks, Adam? Or?
There's one in particular that's starting to impact, framing members are starting to get some water damage, so we're gonna get after it one way or another, but as of right now, it's manageable.
Would it be a whole roof reshingle?
This cost would be whole roof plus a few different siding and trim work that needs to get replaced, but for 27 or maybe end of 26, if I have a surplus, it would just be partial, waterproofing probably with just some kind of spray product or whatever. But
How old is that roof?
I want to say that's the late 90s.
Yeah.
So it's definitely hit a 30-year mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's so many hips to it that I think it's probably even got a shorter life than a typical, flat roof would.
Okay. So I didn't understand. I get on the elevator repair. Like we've talked about that one pretty extensively. On the parking lot paving, we didn't have any of that money because we went into the default budget because we originally were planning on it. Is that
No, they've got $33,000 in the operating budget under CIP.
But we think it's going to be more.
It's going to depend on asphalt pricing. So,
Like how much are we thinking?
Liquid asphalt is definitely up from last year this time, but not the crazy amounts that we had worried that it might be. So
So we talking about like another couple grand?
at most. The trustees have asked for a few modifications that we might be able to do prior to add a couple of parking spaces, that just minimal type work for DPW if we can make sure we make it in time. But I don't think the project cost will be a huge change from the estimate.
And no update on the elevator yet?
Other than it should be in this week, the part should be in this week. So I emailed them this morning actually, but I haven't heard back.
So you might get started next week, or,
I'm
yeah, fingers crossed. Some of these make sense, and I feel like we should just get them done. So Adam, Derek, the wall is like rotting out here, is that what I'm,
Yes, yep.
so we're starting to get leak into the side of the building?
Yes. So this is where we've got, there's a small dedicated HVAC unit. We're gonna ground mount it, have it re-plumbed, and then we're gonna have to replace the siding that's behind it.
Do you need a motion for?
Nope,
some of
I'm
these?
going to overspend my facility maintenance line.
Okay, so that's gonna end up coming out of the extra that we end up having? We're gonna have.
I don't think it, no, I don't think I'll need to hit the, what we're projecting for savings in the benefits line.
So that one is not needed?
Correct.
Okay. What about the repair on the town hall?
That's gonna depend on, again, what we're seeing for, the final cost. But right now, again, admin will be overspent a little bit, but I've got some savings in other departments. We've had from some pretty significant workers' comp and short-term disability outages in town hall this year. So once those kick in, those are covering 66% of wages of those savings.
So you'll end up covering the first two potentially?
Yes, yep.
But definitely not the next two?
No, revenue collection, I think we were anticipating even just to convert 2 rooms or 3 adjacent rooms to take out the perpendicular walls, put in some type of counter space and everything. That's probably, you know, $100,000 plus project. We've got to find out, one, if we can do a design build where we have somebody doing it, or if we have to actually pay somebody to draw up the plans first. So that's where it's been hard getting some of those numbers together.
Okay. So it sounds like the first two, you got those under control. The next two, basically, we need updates on those and decide whether or not we can do any of that or should do any of that, is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Okay. And Chief, are all of the ones that are underneath yours ones that you can or cannot cover, or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both with 6 months or 5 months remaining. I don't know what else is going to come up that's going to take a priority.
So which ones do you think you have under control?
Right now, none of them are priority based on current budget.
Right now, what?
Right now, with the current budget I have remaining, I'm not committing any funds to those.
To any of these?
Any of them.
I personally think that we should be fixing the roof leak and the shower drain. I mean, you do have women using that shower, I assume?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
And just right now, it's dripping into the apparatus bay, so it's not it's not dripping currently. We have a temporary fix on there that's working.
I think we should just fix it.
The roof is a structural integrity of the building.
Yes.
To me, that roof should be fixed, period.
I make a motion to have the Station 1 roof leak, the first floor women's bathroom repaired, and Station 1 women's shower drain replacement properly fixed, using some of the excess funds that we had in the benefit line.
Yep, second.
Motion by Josh, second by Mark. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. My concern here is the lights. That could be a liability. I mean, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think we should let that. But unfortunately, that's probably the most expensive item on here.
We can pay for that for the long run.
But I think we should start thinking about replacing it somehow, getting the money somehow.
Chief, is that an actual quote? The 54,000 for the vehicle and the
So
lights?
when I started here as the deputy, that was a significant operational concern that I had. The captain at the time brought me through the system. We tried resetting it a couple times. It never held. We were working with one company. That company's been very hard to get a hold of.
Okay,
I have another company coming in next week to
Okay.
give me a better assessment of the situation, as well as a quote for options.
okay. Are there more than one company? Like, is it just those two?
Sure, there's more than two companies.
Okay.
But just like anything else right now, even getting a time of day to get a quote for getting your deck done or something like that, it's extremely difficult right now.
Okay, so, I guess what I'm asking is, do we need to put an RFP out since it exceeds a certain amount?
Probably will be.
Okay,
Let me, if I can, I'd like to continue with the plan, them coming in next week, assessing the situation, and then I'll be able to provide better recommendations to the board for either short or long-term changes to that, with some costs to those options, if that works.
is that, Derek, still within the bounds of the policy that you can engage a company?
So this is a very specialty, I think, our.
I'm just getting an idea.
I just want to make sure that we're covering our bases.
Yeah, I think usually.
I'm not going to contract anyone. It's definitely going to have to be the cost on it, most likely, based off of what I got from deceased Captain Connor. He was under the impression from the previous company that we were working with that the system would have to be replaced.
Okay.
Because I guess it's an old traffic control system.
Yeah,
So that system is antiquated. You can't use it anymore.
right,
And the bit, from what I remember him talking about, is the, where it goes underneath the road would have to get replaced. So that either means digging up the road or doing some sort of work like that,
well, if
which
it's
gets very
common, one would
expensive.
hope that you could pull it, right?
So,
Adam has more.
Ben and I have been talking a little bit
Yeah.
about
Okay.
video detection and what we've got.
So I think you're gonna make an assessment on whether or not it can be repaired or if it needs to be replaced.
and then that'll give me a scope,
Okay.
which then will help me will help me develop an RFP.
Perfect.
Then the RFP would go out. No, it will definitely be staying within department policy, department purchasing policy. Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
But it does sound like we need to get more PPE though, for people that are leaving.
Hopefully, it just depends who we get to fill the shoes, literally.
Yeah, the
Um,
boots.
Yeah, so the other thing is, we did get that grant for some of them. So
Okay.
we do have some, again, expense versus revenue for the grant. We were successful with that grant for the 3 sets of PPE for our call members. So that money is coming back to town, but it still shows as an expense. So that helps a little bit. But yeah, I'm already overspent, committed wise. I know you don't see it there in your lines, but my PPE line is already overspent for the entire year,
Okay,
as it is, and I have to cover my 2 new sets, if I have to buy two new sets for these new people coming in.
so we
I
should
have to
hold
cover
off
for
and
another
wait
one.
and see where you land and figure out if we need a budget transfer, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, probably towards the end of the year, yep.
Okay. And then what about the Station 2 window replacement? Like, you said nobody's getting hurt. will we save money by putting in proper windows? Are we spending a lot on heating? Like what's,
Actually, I'm glad you brought that question up, because
Okay.
I just, last quarter,
yeah,
I just started looking into, I'm a big proponent of looking into the units used as well as the cost per unit.
Yeah.
Very similar to overtime and other stuff like that. And I actually did find that our number of units that we're using per year continue to increase. I haven't had time to look into that to determine why that is.
okay,
I want to see, temperatures, average temperature, all that type of stuff. I need to dive into it, but there is enough there. It's raising my eyebrows a little bit, why year over year we continue to increase the number of units used for Station 2.
okay. So Station 2's units are increasing year over year.
Yeah,
Do we have more people in Station 2
No.
year over year? Same number of people?
yes.
Okay. We have people that are more cold-blooded, more warm-blooded, like,
No, because that doesn't happen because we set it.
okay.
We set the temperatures. No.
So you set the temperatures and those are set every year? But if it is as if we're using more propane or electricity?
So it's most likely, and most likely it's the heat is escaping somewhere.
Okay. All right.
I mean, if you're using more units, you're either colder or it's escaping. That's
Well, I built, not that everybody...
my non-engineering
I
brain.
built windows and doors before,
Okay,
like literally assembled
Yeah.
them. And that gasket in between the windows does deteriorate over a period of time and you
Yeah.
start to lose.
and we looked into it, I believe, 20 years old for those windows that are currently there.
Okay.
How long has Chief Nault been gone?
You would know better than me.
Okay. no,
So we're looking at about 20 years, and those years have been utilizing in-window AC units on the vinyl, so that's been tugging
So
at.
also wearing and tearing at the vinyl. Okay, so you're gonna provide more information later, so don't act on that one yet, is what I'm hearing?
Yes, don't act on that one yet.
Okay.
We'll get some, so I already have the quotes in. I did get more than 3 quotes, so if we need to act on those windows now, we definitely can. But I'd probably say this fall, let's see where we're at budget-wise.
Okay,
I just got a call this weekend that the floor drains at Station 2 are blocked up, so we've got a company coming in to deal with that tomorrow. I don't know what that's gonna wind up yielding.
Elmore doing
St. Ange.
it? Oh, okay.
so what's going on with Station 2's roof drains though?
So Station 2's roof drains, so that was the parking project. Derek can tell me where the funds came from that. That wasn't regular operation. That project, looking back at the records, again, that was before I was chief. The records was for paving and drainage, and then the available funds couldn't cover what the estimates or what the quote came in at, so drainage was removed. So now we have the problem of the roof drain coming down onto the parking lot, and then in the winter, it just freezes and,
So it's causing a safety concern.
yes.
And does Adam have recommendations on how to fix that, or?
I haven't looked into it yet.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I don't want to have another workman's comp issue because people are slipping and sliding all over the driveway.
We definitely had that concern last winter, so DPW was good enough to help us out, get a salt barrel. So we put a salt barrel out front of the station, and the firefighters are utilizing that the best that they could, but just definitely not gonna prevent it.
So keep an eye on it right now is what I'm hearing.
Again, another thing, station project-wise, that I need to get additional information for you on.
Okay. What's the next one after that, the Connex training prop?
Connex, yes. So we purchased the Connex last year. That is for storage, so we did away with the hazmat trailer, so all the hazmat equipment is in there now. And then the other plan for that was to develop that into a training prop, so we stopped using the roof at Station 1,
Yeah.
as well as a couple other, we don't have any training facilities in town.
Yeah.
So we have to MacGyver them, and they're not the safest, they're not operationally the best to use. So we're trying to do something. So that is the Connex there that we're going to put a metal flooring on and then put permanent props there that are a lot safer for our personnel to use, as well as less wear and tear on our buildings.
Josh, if you go by 93,
Yeah,
heading north, on the left-hand side, you have Station 4.
yeah.
You'll see there's, 4 or 5 Connexes. They build actually buildings out of them, and they train with them.
Yeah, I didn't know if we have like agreements with other towns where we can use their training facilities or anything like that.
We have one under Sauhegan Mutual Aid to utilize Nashua, but it's extremely expensive and obviously it's far away.
Okay.
We do, under state regulations, have the ability to go to the New Hampshire Fire Academy twice per year for
Yep.
free. However, for the last 2 years, we haven't been able to get in.
Because they don't have space for us?
They don't have instructors.
Because they don't have instructors?
Yep,
Okay.
people to take care of the building while we're in there. operating.
Instructors, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so that one sounds like it's not a mandatory right now, but it's on there, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a priority for us, yep.
All right. Okay. Do we want to have Adam get quotes for the roof?
At DPW,
Yeah?
I think
It's pretty low, he said.
he already did, or started.
Does he, you have RFP quotes for the roof?
Just one written quote, we do an RFP.
They haven't done an RFP.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think as bad as that leak in the roof sounds, I think it's a low priority, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's above that light.
No,
Yeah, I mean, he can temporarily fix it, I'm sure.
well, he even said that.
He's got enough talented guys.
Yeah,
All right, perfect.
okay. Let's move on to the action matrix.
We never get there. Derek, I know this one's another low priority, but have you talked to anybody about snow clearing?
So what I've gathered is at least what some of the other community does. Bedford puts their municipal buildings out for bid.
Okay.
They've got an RFP package. Last year they had to budget $40,000, so that to be a brand new expense
Yep.
that the town has not. So if you'd like, at a future meeting, I can bring a draft RFP. If you do it starting this winter, that expense will not be in the default budget, because it would be a new program. But I think Bedford last year, they only got one bid. They were, like I said, $40,000 for about the same for what we'd be looking at for facilities.
You may as well start now, because the closer you get to winter, the harder it's gonna be to get somebody to come and do that work. I know, personally, I'm getting phone calls already, hey, can you come plow my driveway? Hey, can you come shovel? No, thank you, I'm all done, I gave that job up.
I'll make a motion to have you prepare the RFP for review.
That's fine, I'll second.
Motion by Charles, second by Mark. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
All right, so. We did the traffic study discussion, snow clearing.
Yep. We're all done with Medville, right? We've done our.
That was, the grant was submitted today. Today was the deadline, so I did get a notification by email that that had been submitted, so yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Did we get the 5-year pro forma for the CRFs? Or?
No, I'm kind of trying to do some projections based on, so capital reserve funds in this town have not passed unless they're funded from unassigned fund balance.
Correct.
You have a limited amount of unassigned fund balance. What I'm building out right now is a projection of what we're putting in every year, what's being taken out at town meeting to kind of project where fund balance would go. I'm also doing some projections of where the county and school tax commitments are going. To kind of see, you know, and to kind of get some ideas of where you'd be comfortable. The fire department in their presentation to CIP is kind of notified that there is a need to up that from 350,000 to 450,000, and then we've got the other one. So I will have that for you in your next meeting.
Okay.
And kind of what assumptions went into it.
Any other concerns on the matrix?
I just,
Mark?
Adam, question for you. How's our trash truck doing? The new one, I haven't seen it out. Has it come out?
So talking about the backup rental, quick
Correct.
truck rental. So both operators got a chance to take it out last week. The cabin operation is good. We have a couple questions that we're going back and forth with the rental company right now. One is the truck is not equipped with a height limiter, which comes into play quite often as they dump loads in the recycling building in particular, because of the high bay door height and if you're out of stock, a truck can go high enough to hit that. So when we spec out trucks, we have limiting switches and shutoffs put in. They do not have that. So if that's something that we want, are we responsible for that installation or not? The second thing is out of stock spec, the hydraulic pump on that truck only operates when the truck is stopped. Currently, our trucks are spec'd to run constantly because otherwise it can't pack unless you're stopped.
Yep.
And where we have in the village in particular a lot of stops, or in Narville, a lot of stops in a quick period of time, you're going to have to stop at some point to pack. So I can't quantify yet how much time that would add if we can't get that changed, or if we're even allowed to modify that setting. So that's what we're working with them going forward. So if we were to go, for a backup emergency truck, it's not as big a deal, but if we're going to frontline in the future, we're going to want to suss out those two concerns that we have so far.
so we need to figure that out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And did we put the other one out for bid?
Have not put them on municipal bid yet. Zeb was collecting some more info because we actually have a couple of vehicles that I think the board had already voted to put out to bid, and for one reason or another they weren't ready yet for sale. So we're going to have a couple other things, and we wanted to do one advertisement. So he's getting some pictures and mileage and known issues and stuff, so we can do the ads properly. But that should be shortly.
We have one more on here that says that, especially if we're going to be talking to the budget committee soon, said board decision needed on approach of 2027 budget, specific, I guess, to the vehicle leasing. Derek?
Yes.
So I think we need to come up with a decision on how we're planning on approaching that going into the budget committee as well.
Yeah, right now, what we would do without absent direction, different direction from the board, what we would do is just bring over the approved CIP matrix for vehicles, and we put them in as outright purchases. So if you were going to do something different, then we would need to know that, so we can build that into the budget.
What do we have on there now?
What do we have on there?
Yeah, for the CIP, like things that may end up coming up for this upcoming year, for 2027.
If you
There's
give
a
me-
whole matrix of projects.
If you give me just a second, I'll pull up the matrix where it currently stands. It's pretty substantial because we've basically gone 3 budget cycles without getting the needed.
Which is already gonna shoot us way above.
Yes, it is.
Right.
That's what I call it, kicking the can down the road, we're paying for it now, sorry.
Right, so it's gonna be just short answer is it's gonna be a pretty short list if we're capping capital expenditures to that 5%, or 5 to 7. Significantly longer if we go to a lease purchase model, we can front load some stuff, but it won't be the full, as.
So basically the financing piece.
Exactly.
Right.
That would allow us to turn over more in year one. It won't be quite as long a list as I gave you in the fleet report. Trying to do, okay, 100% of this funding could get you X. If we're gonna be at that 5% limit, obviously it'll be a shorter list, but.
So PD has their 3 cruisers for $200,000. Fire apparatus capital reserve fund deposit, $450,000. Fire rescue boat, I gotta look in the right one. Car, 1 replacement, $96,000. And then DPW was pretty much, you were at about $1 million a year.
A little bit less on the
A
first.
little bit less for,
Those are all purchases right now for the million?
Right now, that's what's programmed, yep.
yeah, it's programmed.
And that's the same ask, I think, for year one as last year's proposed. So Packer truck, roll-off truck and, removing the trailer.
Yeah.
I would make a
Six-wheel dump
motion
truck.
for DPW to approach it from either a rental or a lease finance approach this upcoming year moving forward,
And target the amount
and target the amount.
with that 5 to 7.
That would be my
increase.
motion.
Seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, motion by Josh, seconded by Richard. And that was the only, you were the only one that leasing would make sense, we really talked
Right.
about, right? So it's
I won't
confined
speak for them,
for,
but it seemed like it, yeah,
Yeah,
it seemed like that
okay,
was the
all right.
case.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, car 1 replacement wasn't until 28 for fire, so,
Car one is the, like the SUV,
the Tahoe, yeah, so that's not till 28.
so we don't have that this upcoming year.
No, you have a boat
A
replacement.
boat.
Which
And
is pushed
how
out.
much is the boat?
25,000.
Not even worth
That's
discussing.
station one's motor or station two's motor?
That would be the oldest one, so that's a 2006.
Let's-
And the cars are already in the budget.
let's vote on the motion before we forget to vote on the
The PD
motion.
cars you're
Yeah.
talking about? Yeah, I think so. too.
Okay, everybody remember what the motion is?
Yes.
All in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can you just remind us who made the motion and who seconded it?
I made the
Josh
motion.
made it,
And Richard.
Richard
Richard
seconded.
So there's no other vehicles then?
No, you've obviously, you've got the increase in the police department amount, but it's still,
Still part of the budget.
Right.
yes.
And just so I start with the right number, for me, default was 0 for equipment. But I had road plan funding plus the special article addition to road, the one-time.
That's the one time. Yeah, so I don't,
Should I use the default level road funding number increased by 7%, and that's my entire capital change?
they're gonna go after that, so yeah, I think you should
Yeah.
do the entire.
Okay, not include the one-time funds.
No, I think if we need to make another one-time fund, if we have that, then we
Yep.
can make that assessment
Okay.
at that point in time. And I think we start to figure out how we can start to build that up a little bit.
Yep,
Let's smooth out the vehicles first,
yep.
so that way we can get that more consistent, and if we can get that in there and then make it start being part of the budget, then we can start to add that year over year.
So our year one increase, I should target, basically that 7% is all equipment. Flatline the road portion of capital, but use my 7% increase in capital altogether, all as equipment, probably. is
Yeah.
Dollar-wise about what's gonna make sense.
I think that's what we're gonna have to do, because I think if we go in there for $1 million in cash, they're gonna be like, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can start to level that out and then start to do the increase, we can start to get that smoothed out.
Okay. All right,
Okay,
I'll see what we
cool.
can make happen.
All right.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Alan.
Was that the last one that you needed an answer from us on, Derek?
That should definitely, that'll definitely help departments as they move forward, yes.
Okay.
Okay, open it up for public comment. Anybody here for public comment? Seeing no one, I'll close public comment and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we go into non-public session, RSA 91A, 1:32 for hiring and B, land, right?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mark, second by Josh. Roll
Yes.
call vote.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
That's it, right?
Yeah, that's it.